If you can't handle big emotions yourself, how can you possibly help your child navigate theirs? Welcome to the Connect Method Parenting Podcast, where correction is out, connection is in, and your kids want to listen to you. I'm Andy Martineau, creator of Connect Method Parenting, here to help you stay calm, confident, and connected no matter what. Hey, everybody. I'm full of so much energy today. I cannot wait to dive into this episode with you all. So I recently had this intense coaching session with a mom who was completely stuck in the cycle of yelling and then feeling guilty she yelled and then yelling again. And right in the middle of the call, we had this moment where everything clicked for her. And I thought, this isn't just for her. Everyone needs to hear this because it could legitimately change your entire parenting experience. This, my friend, is my jam. This is what I specialize in. If you ever work with me, this is the kind of transformational experiences that happen because of the attachment approach and the way we implement it. It's so amazing. And I'm going to give you a shortcut version today. So let me paint this picture. So this mom, let's call her Sarah, came to me completely exhausted. She said, Andy, I love my kids more than anything, but I'm constantly triggered. One minute, everything's fine. And the next minute, I'm losing it over something super simple, literally. And I could see exactly what was happening. One of the things that we needed to dive into that I saw so clearly was what I call emotional capacity, the ability to experience a whole range of emotions without them hijacking your life and specifically your parenting. And this isn't just an issue with this client. It's an issue with so many of us. When I look back on my own parenting journey, hello, baby powder blizzard, if you've read my book or heard me reference it on the podcast, that was just one moment that illustrates how emotionally not capable I was, how emotionally immature I was. And when I work with parents, I see the same pattern over and over again. And here's what I told this client that shifted everything. It began a chain reaction. What if instead of trying to stop feeling triggered, we developed the capacity to feel everything? So we started feeling everything, started the path of huge capacity to feel everything instead of stop feeling triggered. And we could feel everything and still parent from our highest self. Her face changed instantly. She said, is that possible? And yeah, that's what I'm sharing with you today. The 8 emotional capacities that transform reactive parents into connected ones. They're not just nice ideas. They're practical emotional muscles that every single one of us can strengthen starting today. So what are emotional capacities? Let's get super clear on what I mean by emotional capacities. They aren't just feelings. They're your ability to experience a range of emotions, a huge range of emotions on both sides of the spectrum, without them hijacking your parenting, without them taking over your actions. They're the emotional muscles that let you respond instead of react when your 3-year-old is having their 3rd meltdown of the hour, or when your tween is rolling their eyes so hard you're worried that their eyes might get stuck in their brain. That is what we're talking about here, where it just feels like you're up against a situation that is so hard. It's so different than what you want to be facing today. And you can feel your nervous system start to go into fight or flight. And you're saying, no, I can feel this. I don't have to be driven by it. And here's something I need you to really hear. Hear me on this one. For everything you haven't done that you want to do as a parent, for every reaction you have had that you wish hadn't happened, there is an emotion you're avoiding feeling that is in the way. You know that moment when you want to set a boundary, but you don't because you're afraid of the tantrum or the attitude that might follow? That's an emotional capacity issue right there. Our emotional range is the limit to which we can impact, guide, and lead our children. You can't take your kids beyond your own emotional capacity. Think about it. If you can't handle big emotions yourself, how can you possibly help your child navigate theirs? It's not going to feel safe for them to have a big emotion that you don't feel safe having. Before I dive into these 8 game-changing capacities, let me tell you why this matters so much. It's because your kids aren't being difficult on purpose. I had a huge wake-up call years and years ago almost, gosh, how long has it been? Maybe my youngest is 16. It was my two youngest. So probably 14 years ago. So when 14, 15, I don't know, something like that. It's been a while. It was when my 16-year-old and my 17-year-old were like 1 and 2. So that shouldn't have been hard math 15 years ago. I was standing in Target and they both started having huge meltdowns. This was one of many times. I don't know why it was always in Target, but it seemed to always be in Target. It was close to our house at the time, and it was a place that I would go when I needed just to get out of the house, and I had to take them because I couldn't, I didn't have any kids old enough to care for them because they were I had so many kids, 6 kids in 8 years. So even though I had some kids that were old enough at this time to stay home alone, I didn't want to give them the added responsibility of watching these two youngest ones that were a year and 5 days apart. So they were like twins. So I took them with me, and huge meltdown. It was usually about wanting a candy. And I got so many looks, so many side eyes. It said, control your children. I was really sensitive to it because I was onto myself at this point, really onto myself at how immature I was in so many areas. I was trying to do better. But as many of the parents I work with have found out, the more awareness you have, especially if you haven't been wanting to look at it and then you start looking at it, it becomes a lot for a while. You become more uncomfortable, which is fine. It's totally part of the process. We get through it. It's the only way through. Anyway, but I was in this really sensitive moment in my journey, and my girls just epic category 5 meltdown. And for a second, I believed I should be able to control them, that I was a failure, that this meltdown meant something was wrong with them and probably wrong with me. But here's what I know now that I wish I could tell myself then. When your preschooler has a meltdown in Target and that judgmental shopper gives you the side eye, your little one isn't trying to embarrass you. And the side eye from the shopper has nothing to do with you. It has to do with their thoughts about themselves and kids and parenting. Who knows? So much. But they get to have their experience and you get to have yours. So if I could go back to myself 15 years ago and say, hey, she's not trying to embarrass you. They're not trying to make you feel bad. It's just that their nervous system is overwhelmed. You just told them they couldn't get something and that was too much for them. And they literally can't calm down. Their nervous system is in fight or flight. And for those of you who have teens or tweens, older kids, and you're feeling that strain, they're not trying to pull away or to hurt you. No, it might feel like it. It does sometimes. They're trying to figure out who they are. And they need us as parents to be emotionally strong enough to let them explore themselves, their journey, their emotions, their friendships, their life, while still being their safe harbor. We let them have their big emotions without mirroring them, without getting sucked into the storm. We are calm and confident. We are the compassionate alpha. We aren't feeling overwhelmed. We can handle their big emotions. We know we can solve whatever needs to be solved and help support them and however they need to be supported and move through it. And that is one, if not the most, I believe, important gift we can give our kids is feeling, or rather creating safety and feeling safe, you could say as well, when they have their big emotions. So let's dive into these 8 emotional capacities that can transform your parenting journey. They've truly transformed my parenting journey. They continue to transform my parenting journey because I don't think the journey's ever over. We're going to hit some pretty amazing pinnacles. We're going to hit the peaks of what seems like Mount Everest in our journey. But what I have found is that then there is another journey, another mountain to climb, another capacity that we can acquire that we couldn't even see until we hit the first peak. And then all of a sudden, we see the second one and we can't help but climb it. So the 8 emotional capacities of connected parents. Number 1, the capacity to hold space for big emotions. To me, when I think about the capacity to hold space for big emotions, the emotion that comes up, because these are the emotional capacities, right? The emotion I embody when I have the capacity to hold space for big emotions is attunement. And to me, this is the foundation of everything. Can you sit with your child when they're having a category 5 emotional hurricane without trying to shut it down, without trying to make them wrong for it, without getting sucked into the vortex? Just last week, one of the moms I work with said, I yell too much. I feel like my kids don't want to be around me. They think I don't love them because I yell too much. And she was heartbroken and feeling so sad about where she was We were just getting started in our work together, and I had so much compassion for where she was and so much gratitude that she was doing something about it. Her greatest wish was to stay calm when her kids were falling apart. That's attunement. That's the emotional capacity that she wanted to develop, holding the emotional container of safety, of confidence when everyone else is losing it. Not getting triggered when your kids are yelling at you or frustrated with you. I'm not saying you are passive. You're firm. You're compassionate. You don't match their emotional energy, their emotional signature. Let me share what this looked like in my life. In my book, I talk about the Machu Picchu hike. And my daughter at the time was around 10 years old, I believe. And she was having this complete meltdown as we went towards Machu Picchu. Now, mind you, we didn't do the multi-day hike to get to Machu Picchu. We drove the bus up, or we took the bus up. It was terrifying. If you've ever gone, it's scary. So we took the bus up. And I believe the walk from where the bus dropped us off, if I remember correctly, to Machu Picchu was 30 minutes max. I think it was more like 15 to 20, but it was steep and she was little. And this was one of my dream vacations. It was definitely on my bucket list. It had been on my bucket list since I was in elementary school. And I remember learning about Machu Picchu and thinking, what is this place? I want to go there. And here we were there, and I had all my kids with me. I was there with a dear friend that I love, and she was there with her kids, and our kids are really close. And I was very excited. We had hired a guide. He had met us there. We were all walking, and my youngest and I were at the very back end. We were the last people because she was struggling so much. And she turned to me at one point as I believe we were either climbing stairs or going up a very steep incline. And she said, "My legs are hurting so bad. I can't breathe," which I get both of those. I mean, it was a steep climb. We were at a very high elevation, but then she said, "I can't go on." And everything in my body, everything was just violently alarmed by that statement. I resisted it. And I felt this familiar irritation, frustration, sadness, worry come up in my body. What if I wasn't able to go see Machu Picchu? I was so close. Went to worst case scenario. Catastrophizing was at the time, and still, it wants to come to the forefront often. But at the time, it was a well-practiced, really easy to pull up neural pathway. So I went to the worst case. Everyone's going to go up there. They're not even going to realize we're not with them. They're going to see the whole Machu Picchu, and I'm not going to see it. So my brain went there. My brain went to sadness. Why would she be so, selfish? Doesn't she know this is my lifelong dream? And I could feel just so many emotions, a cocktail of resisting emotions come up. And in my mind, the resistance came up like, she is ruining everything for me. Like, this is not okay. How is this? We have got to stop this right now. Thank goodness I had been doing this work for a while at this point, and I was able to recognize what was happening. The takeover of lack and fear and worry, it was starting to come up. I took a breath. I allowed myself to feel the emotions. I had the capacity to feel my own emotions and say, oh, these are just emotions. Then I was able to have the capacity to allow her to be exactly where she was. And I was able to get down on her level and talk to her. And I said, I know this is hard for you, but look at you choosing to take the next step. You are showing me and yourself that you can push through even when it's really hard for you. And it wasn't easy at first. She wasn't an instantly transformed emotional, in a different emotional state, but she did, I believe, start to attune to me and feel my openness to her, my capacity to let her have this experience without it affecting me emotionally. It affected me. I had compassion for her, but it didn't cause me to mirror her emotions. And she started taking steps, and we were celebrating every step. At that moment, this has been years ago, but in my memory, I remember starting to feel the catastrophizing story melt away and realize, worst case scenario isn't I'm not going to be able to see Machu Picchu. Worst case is she doesn't get to see Machu Picchu, but we can have, someone take turns sitting with her or go, we can work this out. And I think as my resistance to her melted away, she was able to also melt the emotions of resistance and not wanting to this melt away. And something shifted inside of her. As we went a few more minutes, she believed she could do it. And we finished the hike from the bus stop to Machu Picchu and spent the next, I don't know how many hours. It seemed like many, many hours. I loved every moment of it. 3, 4, 5 hours. I can't remember. Hours and hours walking around Machu Picchu. And she was pleasant and excited and exploring. And that's attunement. That is when we are attuning to ourselves and our own emotional state so that we can hold space for our child to be in their emotional state. And it changed everything in that moment. So that's what I would call attunement, is I'm able to be connected to myself. And as a result, I'm able to send that signal out to others, especially my kids, and they're able to attune to me. I don't know if this is the proper definition, but this is what it looks like for me, is holding space, holding the container when everyone else is losing it. I think of a tuning fork. We were pretty musical family. I personally am not musical, but I have many musical children. And my husband's very musical. And so we've always had pianos. And well, not always, not when we were first married, but a couple years into our marriage, we got a piano. And when the piano tuner came, he would have a tuning fork, the old school ones, the literal tuning fork. You ding it. And that's how he would get the strings to all tune to the right note. And I think of that analogy with me is, can I be resonating the emotional frequency, the emotion of compassion and love and safety, and then allow my child to match that? So when there's a lot of discomfort or a lot of emotions or anger or frustration that's coming from my child, I think, what is the emotion I want to hold? And first, it's just a permission for them to be where they are, a drop in resistance, an openness. And then I start walking myself through it. So some powerful thoughts to create attunement for me that I love is, I am capable of being present without being consumed. Or, this is not my storm. This is their storm, not my storm. Or, I can be their anchor in this moment. I love thinking those things, and come up with your own couple of thoughts that will help you stay emotionally capable in the moment. So that was the first one, the capacity to hold space for big emotions. For me, I think of the emotion of attunement to go with that. That's what I'm aiming for. It's what I'm seeing if I'm there yet or not. But if that doesn't resonate with you, find an emotion that matches that. It's going to help you so much. Second, the capacity to accept what is. And for me, this is courage all of the way. And I used to think courage was this really positive emotion, that it felt great to be courageous. But courage is really hard. It's really hard to feel courageous. It doesn't necessarily feel good. I would actually classify courage as a negative emotion, because typically when we're feeling courage, we are facing really hard things. So this is a hard one, the capacity to accept what is. The truth is, though, when we argue against reality, we lose 100% of the time. So for me, the capacity to accept what is all about courage, that powerful emotion that rises up in us when we choose to face reality exactly as it is. I had a client once come to me who was so sad for her daughter because her daughter hadn't been invited to a birthday party that everyone else in her class was attending. And she was heartbroken for her daughter. She was upset at this other mom for not being more compassionate. She wanted to talk to the teacher. She was trying to think of anything she could do to fix the situation because it was so hard for her to see her daughter so sad. And I 100% understand this. I've had situations like this where you see your child suffering and you want to make it go away and you can't. And I asked her, what if instead of trying to change reality, we worked on accepting it and helping your daughter navigate through it? And she looked at me like I was suggesting she abandon her child on a desert island. But then something shifted when I said, accepting reality doesn't mean you like it. It means that you stop wasting energy fighting against it. Because when we stop wasting energy fighting against what is, we can use that energy for what could be. So she decided to sit with her daughter that night and come alongside, let her know that she understood. She was so sad. She said, this is really hard. It's hard not being invited. It hurts. She said something like, I'm right here with you in the hurt. But she wasn't trying to fix or have false cheerfulness or compare it to something else that was hard. Her goal was to just meet her daughter where she was at, to accept the reality of the situation. And she messaged me later and said that her daughter cried and let her hold her, and then that the strangest things happened. She started talking about other things she could do that weekend. She started moving through it. And she said she never does that when I try to fix everything. That's true. It's because once our child goes from feeling upset about something to feeling sad and surrendering it, they can move into peace. They can move into resolution. The fight or flight that gets kicked in by our nervous system to protect us against something that's not safe doesn't need to be there anymore, because suddenly the thing that wasn't safe is safe. We're fine. We're okay. Yeah, it was disappointing and it was hard, but we're moving through it. That's how we create emotional maturity. The courage to face what is rather than trying to fight what is gives our children permission to do the same. So 3 of my favorite thoughts to create courage and to accept reality is I can face what is happening right now. I'm trusting that this moment is exactly as it should be. And accepting reality gives me clarity, not defeat. And this is what's happening. And that's a bonus one. I accept this or something better. That's another one I like. Okay. Number 3, the capacity to feel without reacting. This is where the rubber meets the road, my friends. It really is. It's such a big one. The capacity to feel without reacting. And for me, the emotion that I would hitch on this trailer of capacity is tolerance. I hesitate to use that word because so often tolerance can have, in some cases, a negative energy to it. But for me, it's such an empowering emotion to have this huge window of tolerance, this huge capacity to feel without reacting. So it's not fine, I'll tolerate it. It's not that. It's I have the capacity to handle this. And so empowering. In chapter 8 of my book, I talk about how emotions are the fuel that drive everything we do. But here's the $1 million question. What emotions are fueling your parenting? When your teen says something that cuts straight to your heart, can you feel the sting without immediately firing back? This has been one of my biggest growth edges. I remember standing in that baby powder blizzard, looking at my playroom. It was covered in white. If you've read the book, you know the story well, and I know I'm bringing it up twice in this one episode, but it's such a fun, iconic story for me in my journey. And I remember it so vividly. I remember feeling that initial surge of anger and starting to yell, "Are you guys kidding me?" And then something miraculous happened. I paused. That single pause changed everything. I felt the anger pulsing through my body. It didn't go away. I didn't pause because the anger evaporated. I still felt the anger pulsing through my body, but I didn't let it drive the car. I didn't let it choose my next words or actions. And again, this was a miraculous moment. At this point in my life, I hadn't figured out how to do this on demand. I feel as though this experience happened to give me the ability to see what was possible, kind of like the 4-minute mile. It's nobody thought we humans could do it, or maybe only a special few, and then somebody does it, and now high schoolers are able to do it because we see what's possible. And I feel like this moment for me in my life was to have this really different interaction with something that was very upsetting to me and see that my body could actually feel the emotion without reacting to it. And that I could have another emotion come in for a minute. It was cohabitating with the anger, the curiosity, and the compassion, and then have it take the lead and drive the car while still feeling the residue of the anger pulsing through my body. The capacity to feel your emotions without being controlled by them doesn't mean that we don't feel all the emotions. We still feel all of the emotions. I will say over time, the big, strong, scary emotions that used to feel as though they would take over everything inside of me don't feel quite the same. They don't feel as powerful, but I can still feel the edge of them, if that makes sense. I can still feel the ping of them, but the capacity to feel the emotions, all of them, without being controlled by them unconsciously, so having them feel as though they take over, this is a superpower that will transform your parenting. It really will. So a few episodes ago, I don't know which one, and if you want to go listen to the whole story, I believe it's called Encountering Futility. I told this story in detail in that episode. I'm going to tell you a very high level, quick version of it. My son, who I'm going to talk about, Cooper is his name. He came home in March. So he's been home about a month. And I had 2 sons in Chile, and Cooper was going through something really challenging. And because of the nature of what he was doing, we were only able to talk to him once a week. his special time that he would have service and we could talk to him. And I wanted to talk to him, but we were in New Zealand at the time and traveling from one Airbnb to the other. And between the time change and us moving, I didn't get to talk to him. I missed the call. It was my fault. I didn't have the service. I didn't check. it didn't happen. And I knew how challenging of an experience he was going through at that moment. And I was devastated. So we got to the new Airbnb. And as soon as I walked in, I realized what time it was. I realized what had happened. I felt this tsunami of disappointment and frustration wash over me. I was so first mad at myself. Why didn't you set an alarm? And I went right into that self-deprecating, beat yourself up, so mean to yourself moment. And then I went into just pure grief. It was just sadness. It was in a really hard place. And I was genuinely worried about him and his well-being. And I walked into the Airbnb, went through this anger probably for 5-10 minutes. And then I sat on the couch and I just cried. I cried and cried. And I had a moment where a little dilemma went on in my mind where I said to myself, part of me said, you don't need to be this disappointed. You should just get over it. This is not a big deal. He's going to be fine. All of that. And then there was part of me that was feeling so much emotion. And I've been working on increasing this capacity for over a decade. So it's been a long process that I'm so grateful for. And I could feel, I was just very conscious of the two stories, the on the other hand story. Part of me feels this way, part of me feels this way. Part of me wants to just get over it and feels bad, just wants to beat myself up. That was a different part. Part of me wants to beat myself up. Part of me says I should just get over it. And then part of me wanted to just let myself be disappointed and sad. So I sat on the couch ended up laying on the couch. I think I may have even laid on the ground. It was just a long time. I get myself permission to be there as long as I needed to be. I just cried. And to me, having the capacity to feel without reacting. So I didn't start attacking myself. I didn't go into a shame cycle. I didn't get mad at my husband for not remembering either. I just felt. And that to me, this can look so many different ways. So this is one example of I just felt the emotion without reacting to it. I actually embodied, cried, let myself be in the experience, which I had the luxury of doing that day. I had the time, I had the space, I didn't have anybody I needed to take care of. And so I just cried. And after I was done with that hour plus, I think, experience, might have been longer, and it might have been a little shorter, and it was a long time. And I felt exhausted, but I also felt so much better. I felt peaceful. It didn't make the situation change, but it changed me. Because when we're up against something that we cannot change, we have the opportunity for it to change us. And that's what happened. My capacity to feel without reacting, my tolerance to handle disappointment and to mess up increased that day. And sometimes this will look like not us crying on the couch for an hour, but let's say we're having an interaction with our child and we can feel that part of us is really triggered and upset, but part of us has a lot of compassion. So we're able to have those, on the other hand, emotions with the tempering of two contrasting emotions. And we can allow ourselves to have a little bit of frustration or irritation or whatever that negative is. And we can honor that part of us, but it's not running the show. The part that's running the show is the compassion, the curiosity, the more conscious part of ourselves. So that's another way this can show up, is having the tolerance, the ability to have multiple emotions coming up in our body and not having the ones that cause us to lash out or to shut down take over, but instead have the conscious ones of compassion and curiosity and love. For me, it was giving myself love and space was so good. So this is what happens when we develop tolerance or a capacity to feel an emotion without reacting to it from a knee-jerk reaction, like being able to respond the way we want to respond instead of just having an emotional takeover. You get to choose your response rather than having your emotions choose it for you. And some of my favorite thoughts to create this capacity is this emotion is information, not an emergency. I can feel this without acting on it or reacting on it. There is space between what I feel and what I do. Okay, number 4, the capacity to recover after disconnection. And to me, this is all about commitment. If I am committed, then I may have the ability to have the capacity to recover after a disconnection. Because let's be real, we all lose it sometimes. Parents that are perfect, they don't exist. And if you meet one, they're either lying or they're selling you something, because we're humans and we're not here to be perfect. But the capacity, thank goodness, isn't about never failing. It's about how quickly we can repair the connection after a parenting miss. I remember working with a dad who was so discouraged because he'd completely lost his cool over his son's homework. And he said, I just destroy everything. I went in last night, I destroyed everything we've been working on. I backtracked 5, months of progress I've made with him because of what I said. He's not going to trust me again. But here's what I told him. It's not the mistake that matters most. It's what you do next. The mistake has happened. Sure, if you could go back in time, would you do things differently? Absolutely. But because that's not our reality, we're on this timeline where you made the mistake. The next most important thing is what you do next. So he went to his son. He got down on his level and he said, hey, I need to apologize. The way I spoke to you wasn't respectful. It's not who I am. It's not what I believe in. It wasn't who I want to be as your dad. I'm so sorry. Can we start over? He took full ownership and responsibility, which creates safety with our kids. When we can say, hey, I own my mistakes. That wasn't cool what I did. I disagree with what I just said. Our kids can respect us. They can believe in us because that is humanity. That is their truth too. They make mistakes. And what happened next blew him away. Not only did his son forgive him, but actually he started opening up about his homework, about some situations with friends, about what was going on with his teacher, stuff he had never shared before, because the repair actually created more connection than they had had before the rupture. And I share this all of the time, that disconnection is going to happen. The magic is what we do after. It's the bridge. It's putting the emphasis on the next point of connection after setting the limit or after having a conflict. My favorite thoughts to create commitment is our relationship is stronger than any difficult moment. This isn't the end of our story, and I'm committed to finding our way back to connection. My commitment to our relationship supersedes everything else that happened. Number 5, the capacity to set limits with connection. And for me, this is compassionate firmness. You could call it compassionate alpha. That's another word I use. This one's a game changer, especially for my gentle parents trying not to yell crew. Can you firmly hold a boundary, which we need to? Sometimes we go too soft and we need to hold boundaries. We need to have limits. We need to have rules and structure while maintaining emotional connection. So setting limits doesn't have to mean threats or punishment or power struggles. To set, which is a step in my seen and heard framework, it's all about stating the limit in 5 to 7 unemotional neutral words, which helps prevent us from doing the lecture thing. So you could say, hey, we don't throw toys inside, full stop, right? And we just say, I'm going to tell you something that might blow your mind. Your kids, they crave limits. They need you to be the guardrails while they figure out their emotions and this world and how things work. Just recently, one of my clients was sharing how her 4-year-old had started hitting when he got frustrated. And she'd been dancing around the issue, wondering about what she should do. She didn't want to be too harsh, which I respect. So we came up with a simple, clear approach. The next time that he hits, to come alongside. Looks like you want to hit. Let's do it then. Let's hit. I'll bring you something you can hit. So she tried it out. She said that, hey, looks like you have some hits in you. We need to get those hits out. And we lean into the skid. We lean into the reality of the situation, but direct it in a way that's safe. So she brought him a pillow and she said, hey, you can hit this as hard as you can. She joined in on the fun. Hit, hit, hit. Sometimes, there's punching bags that parents have bought, getting boxing gloves on. You lean in to the tendency they have, to the way they're trying to get out their frustration, because the hitting is a result of something else going on inside, something not working for them. That's the root. We got to get to the root, but we also sometimes just need to help them release some of this pent up frustration, this foul frustration. And she said the look on his face was priceless. Like this mix of relief and surprise. He needed to know that she could handle his big emotions and provide safe boundaries. And I got a message from her later and she said, I've never felt so capable of handling his big emotions before. It's like I finally knew exactly what to do. How you set those limits makes all the difference between them being more cooperative and wanting to listen and full-on rebellion, full-on counter will. Powerful thoughts to create compassionate firmness are, I can be both kind and firm. My boundaries are an act of love. Setting limits is how I keep everyone safe. All of those are so good. Number 6, the capacity to trust the process. And to me, this goes hand in hand with patience. Parenting is the ultimate long game. The question is, can we trust that the seeds that we're planting today will eventually grow, even if we don't see sprouts for months or years? I had a frustrated mom once tell me, we are in a constant cycle, nag, yell, guilt, repeat. I want out. I get it. What she couldn't see was that changing these parenting patterns takes time. So I helped her see that and trust that this was a process. There was some emotional capacity that needed to be developed, and we began to unravel it all, and it started to work so well for her, because we can all relate. We've all been in a cycle of nagging and yelling and guilt and repeat, and it's not working for us. It's not working for our kids. But this is a process, and we see this all over nature. We see the change of seasons. Right now where I live, it's trying to decide that it wants to change seasons. It's vacillating between last week us having 70 degrees days and yesterday it was snowing. So we're still in the mix of should I stay in winter or head into spring? And it takes time. And I love that it jumps back and forth where you feel as though it's taking 2 steps back. Like we're all the way back in winter again. It's really snowing. And then today it's warm again. So that's what it's like. That's how seasons change. It's messy. It's not cut and dry. Think about planting bulbs in your garden. You dig the holes, you place in the bulbs, you cover them with soil, and then nothing for months. Absolutely nothing happens on the surface. You might even forget you planted them. In fact, there's some places where I planted tulips 10 years ago. I didn't even know you could do that. From coming from the valley in Phoenix, you don't plant bulbs. The ground gets too hot, so it doesn't work. So when we moved up to the mountains and we bought our cabin over 10 years ago, and I remember going to Costco and they had all these bulbs, and I thought, I wonder if these would really work. And I got them, kind of half hoping, but not sure they would actually work. I didn't know anything about bulbs. And I put them in the garden by the house, and I covered them up. And you buy them in, I think, the fall, and the tulips don't come up till the spring. So I had to wait until from October to April, and then they started coming up, and I'd almost forgotten about them. And then a couple of years ago, I got some more, same thing. We planted them in the fall, finally came up the first season. The new ones came up last year, and they're coming up again now. It's miraculous. It's for so many months of the year, there's nothing there, but they're underground in that dark soil, and something magical is happening. Roots are growing, energy is being stored. And then one spring morning, sometimes when you least expect it, the first green shoots appear. And it's so amazing. We get this most beautiful row of all sorts of tulips until the deer come and eat them. But usually they give me at least a few weeks of enjoying them. And I can't blame the deer. I mean, who wouldn't want to eat a beautiful tulip? Parenting works exactly the same way. All your consistent responses, all the times you choose connection over correction, they're working, even if it is beneath the surface, even when you can't see anything changing. When you're working to change from correction to connection, it often will feel like it's not working. There's this delay until suddenly it works. Just like I tell parents I work with, you're on this flight to the Bahamas, and just because you can't see the beach doesn't mean you're not on your way. You don't get to see the beach at the Bahamas until you're at the Bahamas. You're not disappointed that in the airplane, it doesn't start changing into a beach halfway there. It's often surprising and delayed. It happens all of a sudden, and you aren't sure it's ever going to happen, and then it happens, and it's there. Then it's glorious. Like the white, I don't know, actually, I've never been to the Bahamas, but I'm sure they're beautiful. I was going to say white sands, but I don't know if they have white sands in the Bahamas. But whatever sands they are, I'm sure they're great, and the water's warm, I've heard, in the Caribbean. It's been where I've been in the Caribbean, but it's like that. It's like this long journey that doesn't come to fruition until we get off the plane and get into our rental car and drive ourselves all the way to where we're staying and get to see the beach. So some powerful thoughts to create patience is growth happens in the unseen places first. This is a journey, not a sprint. And the work I'm doing today is creating results in the future. All right, number 7, the capacity to stay curious instead of judgmental. To me, this is about wondering. The capacity is about shifting from what is wrong with my child to I wonder what's going on with them right now. When your child's being difficult, can you get curious about what need they're trying to meet? Can you see their behavior as information rather than defiance? I had a client once come to me. Her 13-year-old son was having a massive attitude that was really challenging for her. She described that every conversation with him was eye rolling, door slamming, one word answers. Her immediate thoughts were, he's being disrespectful. He's turning into a moody teenager. I don't even know who he is anymore. Everything I've done is going, down the drain. It didn't work. And I challenged her to replace her judgment with wonder. Instead of he's being disrespectful, what about, I wonder what's happening in his world that's making him so defensive? And the next time he slammed the door, instead of banging on it and saying, hey, that wasn't very nice, that's not being respectful, that's disrespectful, I said, what if you waited an hour, let him get out whatever he was feeling, process those emotions, feel his emotions a bit, and then gently knock on the door and say, hey, I'm noticing something's off. I'm just wondering what's going on lately, or do you need anything? Maybe saying, I'm not here to lecture, I promise. I'm just here to try to help. And getting curious, being open, wondering about what's going on for him instead of immediately jumping to a conclusion that he's choosing to be rude or defiant. Yeah, he might be having those behaviors, but what's underneath it? What's at the root cause? What's the antecedent? What's the thing that's coming before? And this client I worked with started doing this. It was hard at first. She said, that seems so counterintuitive. It feels like I'm not following through. I'm not being a wise parent. I said, well, just try it. The other stuff's not working. Just give it a try. And she was really open to trying it. She just was sharing her initial reaction was just, oh my gosh, this is so different. I'm like, yes, it is. It is, because this is very, parenting from a developmental attachment place is very different than parenting from a learning theory behavioral modification place. So she started trying it out. She didn't have much to lose, and she was open to other things working. And you know what she learned? She learned that he was being bullied at school. Eventually, he shared that with her. It was something she would have never discovered through the judgments and the demands and the consequences. He would have continued to put up the walls, continued to go in his room, lock the door, shut her out. But eventually he opened up, and she didn't suspect that at all. She was really surprised and so glad that he trusted her with that. And that perspective shift for her of going from judgment and being hurt and frustrated to wonder and curiosity, it shifted everything. So some powerful thoughts to create wonder is there's always more to the story than what I can see. Every behavior is trying to meet a need. I'm a curious scientist, not a critical judge. And finally, number 8, the capacity to choose connection when we want to correct. And for me, this is all about safety. Feeling safe that I can handle whatever's going on, which leads to confidence, which leads to my ability to handle whatever comes up and not have to defend or lean into the hurt I might feel. When you feel emotionally safe, you can choose connection and closeness and stay regulated, especially in those moments when every fiber in your being wants to correct them, wants to help them know how they're not thinking correctly. One of my favorite tools to do this in the moment is a stop, drop, and roll. I talk about it in my book. So if you want to dive into it even more, go read it. But it's a great thing to remember when you're getting triggered. When you're fired up, you stop, drop, and roll. I don't know if the fire department still comes to elementary schools, but when I was in elementary school, and it was when I was, kindergarten, first grade, second grade, it was in the younger years, I remember the fire department would come. We'd go into the music room with the entire 4 classrooms in that grade. We'd have 2 classrooms on each side with a center aisle in the middle. The firefighters would tell us what to do if we ever happened to be in a fire or we were caught on fire. And it was to stop, drop, and roll. And then we would take turns doing the stop, drop, and roll down the center aisle. We would roll down the center aisle. And so as I became a parent and I felt as though I was on fire with emotions that were triggering me to want to say things I knew I was going to regret in 2 minutes, the stop, drop, and roll was something I started to do intuitively. Initially, I would just lay on the ground because there's something about changing where you are physically in your space that changes or gives at least me more space to feel my emotions instead of react to them. So it changes my physical state a little bit. Or when I change my physical state, it changes my emotional state usually. So then the stop, drop, and roll thing, evolved rather out of it. So the stop, and it's an acronym, as you all know. I love acronyms. They help me remember things. It's how I'm able to put things together, I guess, in my world. So stop stands for see the other person. Drop, don't react, observe, proceed. And roll is relax, open, listen, learn. This capacity of choosing connection when you want to correct and feeling safe is about rewiring our default response. There's a lot of need to take action in the moment. And as we learn more about how developmental psychology works and attachment works and the brain works and the nervous system works, we have all this knowledge, but then we have to take action to do it in real time. And that rewiring our brains happens by us taking what we know and trying to do it in the moment. It can be a lot. I was working with a mom once whose daughter had accidentally spilled nail polish. I know, nail polish. It's like the worst. It does not come off on her brand new couch. Now you can imagine, brand new couch, nail polish. She told me how everything in her wanted to scream, lecture, correct, but something made her pause. She used the stop, drop, and roll. She looked at her daughter and she looked at her in the face. So she saw the other person. That's the stop. Her daughter was devastated. She knew that this was bad, 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 bad. She was in tears and she thought, what does she need from me right now? So instead of focusing on the couch, she focused on the connection. She did the drop. Don't react, observe, proceed. So she looked at her in the eyes. She's like, what does she need? She gets what she did. She understands this is really bad. We'll figure out what we're going to do later, but what she needs right now is me. So she took a deep breath and she said, the couch is important to me, but you are much more important. We're going to figure this out. She said, I think my daughter expected a storm of anger. She was so shocked by how I was able to be with her that she came and threw her arms around me and started sobbing and said, Mom, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to. So the mom had relaxed, opened, listened, and learned. She had rolled into it. And also, I love thinking of rolling as rolling into the emotional experience, rolling into the reality of the experience. So she'd gone through the whole stop, drop, and roll thing in this moment. She had seen the other person. She hadn't reacted. She didn't react. She observed, proceed, which is don't react, observe, proceed, which is drop, and then relax, open, listen, learn is roll. It's perfect. And they figured out what they were going to do about the couch. Still has a faint pink stain, she said. But every time the mom sees it, she doesn't think about the accident. She thinks about the moment she chose her daughter over a piece of furniture. That's what safety feels like, knowing that you can choose connection even when correction feels so much more natural. Powerful thoughts to create safety is I am secure enough to choose connection first. Nothing dangerous is happening right now. My relationship with my child is more important than this thing or this moment in time. I can pause reality and be present right now. So how do we grow these emotional capacities? It starts with awareness. You can't change what you don't acknowledge. That's why I created Peace. It's a process that I do over and over myself. I do it with all the parents that come into my programs. The P is for pause and get present. Then we explore what happened. We expand our understanding of what happened in the moment that we wish hadn't. Then we allow ourselves to feel the emotions. We create a new way of being in a moment similar to that. We actually go back in time and we say, if I could go back in that moment, what would I have done differently? And it prepares us to do something different in the future. And then we execute on something to get us one step closer to being able to create our new reality. One mom I was working through this process with realized that when her kids fought, her thought was, they are mean, which made her feel frustrated and really disappointed in herself. She was blaming herself. But when she shifted into their hurting, she felt in compassion instead of frustration and hurt and anger. That emotional shift completely changed her actions and ultimately her results, because the work, you all, isn't about perfection. It's about progression. As one cycle breaker in my community shared, I grew up in an abusive home and I decided to not repeat the cycle. That's why I'm doing this work. That awareness is the first crucial step. And if you want a little bit more help with this, I suggest opening up my book, giving it a crack open, ordering it from Amazon. You can get the Kindle version too. But look at chapter 3 where I have the 6 acceptance questions. This is one of my favorite tools to use when I'm trying to gain more awareness. It's how does what they're saying make perfect sense to them? What do their words tell me about them? How does what my child did make perfect sense to them? What would serve everyone's highest good right now? What am I making their words mean about me and why? You could also say, what am I making their words mean about them and why? Do I want to accept what just happened? If no, why? If yes, why? These questions create space for your emotional capacity to grow. Now that we've explored these 8 emotional capacities, let's turn awareness into action with these specific steps. Step 1, choose your focus capacity. I want you to pick one emotional capacity from today's episode that resonated with you. Don't try to do all 8 at once. That's a recipe for overwhelm. Maybe it's developing more attunement when your child's melting down, or perhaps it's cultivating wonder instead of judgment. Just pick one, doesn't matter which one, and decide that this is the one you're going to focus on. 2, create your capacity building ritual. Just set aside 3 minutes a day. Each morning is what I would recommend, but do it whenever it works for you. You could say when I go to the bathroom, when I'm folding laundry, when I'm washing dishes, just set aside a designated time to visualize yourself embodying this emotion. If you've chosen courage, for example, imagine yourself taking a deep breath and accepting a challenging parenting situation with clear-eyed honesty. Feel that emotion in your body. And here's a little hack. Pick a song that makes you feel that emotion and turn it on while you're imagining this. It's a shortcut. So good. Number 3 is to set your trigger phrase. So create a simple phrase to use when you feel yourself struggling with the capacity you've chosen to focus on. So I'm going to give you some example sentences. Don't necessarily think you have to use these. These are just to get your juices flowing. So if you picked attunement, this sentence could be, I am connected but not consumed. For courage, it could be, I can face what is. For tolerance, this emotion is teaching me something. For commitment, our relationship matters more than this moment. For compassionate firmness, it could be, I can be both compassionate and firm. For patience, growth takes time. For wonder, I'm curious about what's happening. For safety, we are both okay right now. Number 4, practice in low-stake moments. So don't wait for the big, huge, full-on meltdown to practice your capacity. Start with smaller challenges when your child's mildly frustrated rather than in full tantrum mode, and start building your emotional muscles gradually. Number 5, track your progress. At the end of the day, rate yourself 1 to 10. How well did you embody or practice or notice something that helped you increase your emotional capacity? No judgment. This is just data. Notice patterns and celebrate even small improvements. Even having more awareness is huge. Number 6, share your journey. So tell someone, your partner, your spouse, a friend, someone in our community. If you're part of one of our communities, tell someone which capacity you're working on. Put it on Facebook. Say something about it. DM me. I would love that. You could DM me and say, hey, this is the capacity. I just listened to the podcast episode about 8 emotional capacities for parenting, and this is the one I've chosen. I would love to hear it. Or if you're in my community, if you're in League, if you're in Pivot, Mastery, come to an office hours and tell me. I'd love to hear. Sharing creates accountability and also helps solidify your commitment. And 7, extend grace to yourself. Remember, developing emotional capacities, that's hard work. You won't master it overnight, and that is completely okay. In fact, that's to be expected. Every time you stumble and you get back up, you're increasing your emotional capacity. You're not only showing your children what resilience looks like, you're showing yourself what resilience looks like. So this week, I challenge you to choose one capacity to focus on. I want you to write it down. Message me. I would love to hear it. I'd love to get slews of messages about your emotional capacity you're working on. Tell a friend, create a trigger phrase, practice it daily, share it with someone. Again, I'd love to get a message from you. Instagram at Connect with the Parenting is probably the best way. And let someone know what capacity you've chosen to work on and why. Now, remember everyone, every time you stretch your emotional capacity, you're creating more space for connection with your children. And that connection is the foundation for everything else. That relationship, that trust, that shifts everything. So that's what I have for you today. I'm feeling so energized after sharing all of this with you. Can you tell? I absolutely love this work. I love helping parents show up better with their kids. It's everything. It's so important to me. So remember, every time you stretch your emotional capacity, you're creating more space for connection with your children and with yourself. And that relationship that you're building with your children is the foundation for everything you'll do moving forward with parenting. All right, go connect with your kids. Oh, and if you haven't subscribed or left a review for the podcast and have a second to do that, it'd mean the world to me. All right, I'll talk to you guys all soon. Bye. If you enjoyed listening to this podcast, come check out my Connect Method Parenting Coaching Program, where we take this material and we apply it using my proven formula. Head over to cmp.works/join.